Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Bree if you are new here. So you've read the title, you see all of this amazing tomato sauce behind me. I'm gonna show you today the step-by-step process I do to turn tomatoes into amazing tomato sauce. Making tomato sauce definitely is a labor-intensive process, and I recruit my husband for the day to help me. This is the one canning project I definitely have his help on, and he knows it is a team effort to do all of this, which it's kind of just like a fun little Saturday. It was a Saturday for us. A Saturday of canning tomato sauce. So figured I would show you the step-by-step process, and that actually starts the evening before. So step one is to take all of the tomatoes out from the freezer to thaw out. Since canning tomato sauce is an all-day event, I try to consolidate how many times we do this per year by freezing my tomatoes as they ripen throughout the summer. The only thing I do before freezing them is to give them a really good wash, make sure there's no defects, top them, core them, and then throw them in the freezer. This saves a ton of time on processing day because I'm also not having to do all that prep work for the tomatoes. I was able to get 30 bags so far, and our freezers are officially stuffed, so it's time to process. I don't use many single-use bags at all throughout the year other than to freeze what I need to freeze for my garden. So growing my own food is more sustainable in many ways than me buying it, so I'm gonna go ahead and do this one little thing for convenience. But the best you can, sustainability isn't 100% perfect. I bring them upstairs and then I lay them out into a single layer on my counter the best I can to help de-thaw them. The next morning, if there are a few that are still a little frozen, don't worry, this is an easy fix. Using the freezer bags also gives me the advantage to get a little extra water out beforehand. All I do is snip the corner of the bag and let all the extra water out. You can tell this is not juice. This is mostly clear liquid. Whenever I get most of the liquid out of the bag, I look for anything that's still frozen. At this point, I will flip the bag so the cut is towards me and up and run warm water over the bag for just a few minutes. Then you will notice how much more water actually comes out the second time as well. So by doing this in freezer bags, it is truly a game changer when it comes to making sauce, unlike anything else I have tried in the past. This time around, we actually didn't have to take out any extra liquid at all for making sauce. Typically, we would have to use a spoon and ladle out some of the extra liquid that would settle at the top, and yeah, this time we didn't. But that's all foreshadowing, so moving on. There will be some water that will collect in the stock pot. I carefully hold the tomatoes down and slowly let any extra water run out of the pot into the sink. My husband went ahead and started to get some of the tomatoes warm while I continued this process inside the house. Once I got some more done, I brought them outside and filled up the rest of the first pot, and then you guessed it, I went inside and continued to do the same process, getting water out of the bags and filling up my second stock pot. So once the stock pots were filled and the bags were emptied, my husband stayed outside to stir the sauce while I cleaned everything up in the kitchen. We need to get the tomatoes up to a boil, and then once they are up to boiling, we set a timer for an hour, making sure to stir often just so nothing burns at the bottom. We like to use this camp stovetop for a lot of reasons. During summer, it's nice not to heat up the entire house all day. If I need a pressure can anything, I actually can, because I actually have a glass top stovetop in my kitchen. So I can't really pressure can with that. I can water bath can, but that's about it. It also gives us some extra burners on days like this when I eventually have 3 large stock pots going all at the same time, and I definitely can't do that on a 4-burner, oven range. There'd just be no way. So once I got everything cleaned up inside, I went outside to stir the sauce while my husband started to set up for part 2. So after the hour of simmering went by, it's time to use one of my favorite machines. I personally find a tomato press a must for processing sauce. You definitely don't have to get as fancy of one as mine, but I knew I wanted to do this for quite some time, so I went ahead and invested in a really good machine. This one was a little pricey, but I definitely think it's worth every penny. This machine removes all the seeds and the skins from the tomatoes, taking out a lot of labor-intensive work. You definitely need 2 people for this process. One will scoop the sauce into the top, while the other one scrapes down below to make sure everything moves really smoothly. We had a little oops when we first started. My husband actually forgot to screw one of the components all the way in, and everything came tumbling down, but don't worry, there was no sauce spilled, so that was good. This is the biggest batch of sauce we've ever done at once, and we almost wish we had one more large stock pot to catch all the sauce, but we managed to use what we had on hand. Never did I think at 28 years old I would own 2 large stock pots and a pressure canner, but here we are. We continue the process of running tomatoes through the tomato press and dumping sauce into our large stock pot. I needed one of these large stock pots to start water bath canning, so once we got all the sauce into one of our 30-quart pots and another one of our large, just regular pots from the kitchen, I took the other stock pot inside and started to get that clean along with the other dishes from the tomato press and everything else, just to get ready for step 3. So canning days involve a lot of dishes, and I'm so thankful for my large sink. When we remodeled this kitchen 2 years ago, I was starting to really dive into the world of preserving, and I knew it was going to be a must. While I do the fun part of doing dishes, my husband stays outside and continues to stir the sauce when it comes to a boil. So once it comes to a boil, we let it simmer for an additional hour. Once the dishes are done, I start setting up for the actual canning process. I grab all of the jars I'm going to use, take off the lids, clean them, set them aside. I fill my stock pot up with water along with the jars to start getting them warmed up and ready. And while we wait for everything else to get done, I start to assemble my area with a few clean towels, my debubbler, my funnel, my ladle, citric acid, and my jar tongs. I will also note I did end up running out of citric acid. I completely forgot to buy some toward the very end, and I went and switched to lemon juice at the very end, which you can do. So if you ever run out of the problem, just make sure you have lemon juice handy. So once the sauce has simmered for another hour, it's time to go ahead and can. So I take one jar out at a time out of the hot water, set it down, add citric acid, fill my jar with sauce up to the 1/2 inch area from the top. Make sure I debubble, fill with any extra sauce need be, wipe the rim down of the jar to make sure there's no residue left over, and then I secure the lid and place it back into the canner and repeat the process until all the jars are filled. You will want everything to come to a boil and then set a timer for 40 minutes. So I water bath all of my canned tomatoes. You can pressure can them as well, but that's why I add the citric acid and also the lemon juice to kind of bring up that acidity. So no matter what process I do, we should be in the clear. That was always something that I found really interesting. So I actually read on this last year when I came across some information. So we're just gonna pause for a second and let me tell you this. So one thing that I found really interesting is apparently tomatoes back in the day used to be more acidic than they currently are. And also every tomato variety is different acidicness, which makes sense. But yeah, so that's why you need to add a little bit more acidicness to make sure it balances out in the jar. There's no spoilage. Fun fact. So during this entire time, I actually started to do another batch with my pressure canner. I didn't pressure can these, I still water backed can with my pressure canner. It just came in handy to try to cut down some of the processing time. It probably cut down, honestly, an extra like 1.5 hours, which was very nice. Any time saving that can happen during a canning day that's not cutting corners, just do it. During the times I wasn't filling jars, the sauce went back on the burner to stay hot and ready for the jars when I needed it. This process went on for about 3 hours total with just the canning process. That little part took 3 hours. It's one of those things where a lot of people are like, why would you even do it? But there's so many reasons why I love canning my own sauce. Canning my own harvest really brings an appreciation to food I never had before doing so. When you work really hard from start to finish, you have a deeper value to the things you're consuming. So I started these seeds in January, and now it's the beginning of September, and I am reaping the harvest. Cliche, but I am reaping the harvest of all of my hard work from this year. And every time I get to use one of these jars of sauce in a dish over the fall and winter, I'm reminded of all the hard work, and I got to preserve a little bit taste of summer, which is just honestly priceless. Unfortunately, this year I did not hit my goal of a year's worth of sauce, but I definitely got closer than last year. I started the day at 11:15 in the morning, and once I got done with the last set of dishes, it was right around 9:30 at night. I was able to get 30 quarts and 6 pints, and that will last us about 4 or 5 months. And ideally, I would love to have 1 to 2 jars a week to sustain a year's worth. But that's still a lot of sauce that I no longer have to buy from the grocery store, and that is a win. So the only thing left to do is to take down my little display and actually date all of these jars, take off the rings, and take them all downstairs for storage. So I'm gonna take you along for that as well. One thing I am doing here is just lining up the little date marker. That way I can just go through real fast. I'm not having to write the date in any kind of weird, crooked way. Another good thing to get into habit is don't throw away your boxes, especially if you are storing things, in my case downstairs. It makes it a lot easier to carry these jars downstairs in a box like this that has some nice high little sides. So that concludes the process of how I process my tomatoes into sauce. If you guys would like, you're probably in a month to 2 months time, because I'm going to be doing quite a bit more canning in the upcoming like 6 weeks. If you're interested in me doing a video on everything I preserved this year, let me know. Let me know in the comments below. I'll see you guys all next week though. Bye!